Hello everyone, it's me, Duke Sparrow. Have you ever remember a game as a kid and you just look back and you say to yourself, wow, I actually played that as a kid? Well, I certainly do. I myself, personally, am a huge fan of the horror genre. And I can actually credit my love for the horror genre for Doom 3. I'm not sure if you guys can see that. It's probably backwards, but I feel like you guys might get the gist. So, Doom 3. Yeah, I remember this game a lot. Believe it or not, it actually was my very first Doom game. Yeah, I know, shocker. But actually, I remember playing this game on the OG Xbox sometime back in 2005, I believe. My father got it for me, and this game actually scared the crap out of me. And I actually remember it being one of those games where it actually relied more on atmosphere and the jump scares. This was before I got familiar with the original games, such as Doom 1, 2, and Doom 64, which is also one of my personal favorites, Doom 64 itself. And this was obviously a time before Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal came out. So, what is Doom 3, you may ask? Well, Doom 3 itself, for those of you who are not familiar, is part of the Doom franchise, where it's, despite its title, it has nothing to do with Doom 1 or 2. It's supposed to, as described by the developers, it's supposed to be a game that exists as if the first two games didn't exist. Meaning this game is supposed to be its own unique take on Doom itself, which is what it is. So Doom 3 takes place in the year 2145, I believe. You play as a nameless Marine. This is not Doom Guy, mind you. This is not the same Doom Marine that we become familiar with in the original Doom games. He's just a nameless Marine. You go to Mars, and hell breaks loose, all because the UAC is doing teleportation experiments. What's new on that? And all hell breaks loose from there. So, the game itself, I remember this game used to scare the crap out of me back in the day. And then this was before I got into games like Silent Hill, Dead Space, Resident Evil. This game itself, first of all, it's a very dark game. And I'm not talking about tone, I'm talking about it's literally dark, as in I can't see my hand in front of my face type of darkness. The game itself it actually had a id Tech engine where the shadows and the shadows itself were very thick, to the point where you actually had to use your flashlight to kind of look around and see where the enemies were. I feel like that's what was part of Doom 3's charm, was the fact that unlike the original Doom games, which were kind of the run-and-the-gun type of deal, Doom 3 itself relied more on horror than on action. A horror action game, if you may, taking cues from games like Half-Life. And it also takes cues from movies like Event Horizon and a little bit of Hellraiser here and there. Yeah. And the game itself, I remember when this game came out, I remember being scared to death from it, like I said, and the gameplay, for the most part, is great. There are some weapons, such as the shotgun, which I wouldn't say they got nerfed, but I feel like they got a little bit too realistic with how the guns were supposed to be working. Like, for example, for the shotgun, you had to get up close and personal, and boom, an enemy's dead. Unlike in the original Doom games, you could just use a shotgun like a fucking sniper, which was, is what made Doom Doom, in my opinion. The enemies, for the most part, are pretty terrifying. I'm not gonna lie, these redesigns were pretty damn terrifying. The imps, the Pinky Demons, the Revenant, the Archviles, all of them had some very unique redesigns. I loved how the people in id Software decided to give the demons that we know and love from the original Doom games a modern redesign, and how they would look in this iteration of Doom. Most of the designs I like. Some of the redesigns I was kind of like, that doesn't look anything like the original design from the original Doom games. But I digress. The game itself it's totally, it's definitely one of those games where, when you think about it, it's basically the black sheep of the Doom series. When people talk about Doom, they mostly talk about Doom 1, 2, and to an extent Doom 64, but obviously Doom 2016 and Eternal. Doom 3 I always felt was kind of taking a back seat when it came to that discussion. So I feel like when it comes to Doom 3, I feel like Doom 3 itself, a reason why it became the black sheep of the series was the fact that it took a whole new direction that was, I guess you could say, was not Doomish. I don't know if that's a word. It took a direction to a horror direction of sorts, which I find nothing wrong with that, because I think, in my opinion, despite it not feeling like Doom for the most part, I feel like it was a very interesting direction for the series. I mean, I had no problem with the whole run and gun thing in the original Doom games. I didn't have no problem with that. I love the direction they took after Doom 3, going back into the basics for Doom 2016 and Eternal. I'm very excited for Doom: The Dark Ages. But for Doom 3, I felt was a very interesting specimen when it comes to Doom. It's, like I said, it's horror action. I don't think I've ever mentioned the story. Well, I think the reason I haven't really touched the story much is because there isn't really much to go over. There is actually a story. There is actually a story that's kind of fleshed out in these things called PDAs, which you have to pick up from dead scientists to kind of get a better understanding of what is really going on. But it's optional. So if you care not to know anything about what's going on in the game, by all means, skip the PDAs. But here's the story. Like I said, you play as a nameless Marine. You go to Mars. You're assisted by Counselor Elliot Swan and Jack Campbell to go to Mars to kind of check out the UAC facility called Mars City. That's being run by this obviously not evil guy named Dr. Malcolm Betruger, who gives off a lot of Emperor Palpatine vibes. I mean, think about it. The guy talks like Palpatine. Tell me the guy doesn't talk like Emperor Palpatine. Just tell me he doesn't. I'll wait. Okay, back to the video. But yeah, Betruger, he starts the invasion. Swan and Campbell, they try to prevent the demons from getting to Earth by basically cutting off all communications. There's also another character, Sergeant Thomas Kelly himself, who's actually, for the most part, he's actually an ally. But later on, he becomes like a, spoiler alert, he becomes a demon. It's never really referenced whether or not he was working with Betruger this entire time. I personally don't think he was. I think he was just corrupted by Betruger. In regards to the main character, the Doom Marine in this game, there's really not much to go on about him, other than he's the player character. We play as him. I feel like what was very disappointing to me was that the Doom Marine in this one never really felt like he was involved in the story. It felt like he was just a piece of the background that was happening, while the main story was just happening with Campbell, Swan, Betruger, and Kelly. But I felt like we were just participating in this, as in the Doom Marine didn't really matter that much. But aside from that, the story it goes is that you got to prevent the demons from getting to Earth, right? There's an option where when you eventually get to the communications tower, either you can send the transmission or delete the transmission. Regardless of what ends up happening, even if you end up deleting the transmission, Betruger himself ends up doing it anyway, so it's really not much of a point to it, which I really felt killed a lot of the tension, really. So, regardless of what ends up happening, you have to like, you gotta like make your way through these various areas, like the recycling plant, through the Delta Labs. Eventually, you get to Hell itself, and I have to admit, getting to the Hell levels, I felt was a huge highlight for the game itself. It's a huge refresher because 90% of the game you're basically in the Mars City facility, and it was very, very refreshing to be in the Hell dimension, which was, you know, in contrast to the metal interior of the Mars base. You have like fire and brimstone everywhere. For a game that was released in 2004. This was actually pretty good stuff, I will admit. Even after, so the reason you're in Hell, you have to go to Hell, is that you have to retrieve this artifact called the Soul Cube, which is like this Martian device which was created by these Martian people from a long time ago. And what ended up happening is that by the time you get the device, Betruger himself, he opens this hellhole that will eventually, when the human reinforcements from Earth eventually arrive on Earth, they will hijack the ships and bring this hell to Earth. Which, again, you know, what I really was a little disappointed was that it didn't really feel like there was any tension. Like, there was no sense of urgency. Which was kind of like, I felt was a huge disappointment. But, nevertheless, though, the main objective, you gotta get to the hellhole itself. First, you gotta take on Sergeant Kelly himself, who's turned into this tank-like demon called this Saboth. Saboth. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. You kill him, you get your hands on the BFG 9000, which is a great gun for the most part, but really it's one of those guns where you gotta be really careful not to, like, you know, play around with it and whatnot. So you go to the hellhole, you confront the cyber demon, and I mean, I'm guessing it's not a Doom game without a cyber demon, so I felt like they just threw the cyber demon in there last minute. So you fight the cyber demon, your guns don't do anything, so you gotta like use the soul cube on it like maybe four times. Afterwards, you kill the cyber demon, you seal the hellhole, and that's that. The rescue team comes, they rescue the Doom Marine. Swan and Campbell are obviously dead. Betruger is nowhere to be found. And Betruger, it's revealed that Betruger himself becomes a demon dragon in Hell, called the Maledict. It's basically where the game ends. Which is, I felt was a little anticlimactic because they were setting him up to be the main antagonist, which is what he obviously was throughout the game. And we just never end up fighting him. Which was a huge gut punch in my opinion. Nevertheless, though, they rectify it in the Resurrection of Evil expansion. Which in a lot of ways, it added new things to the Doom 3 lore, which I will get into in another video, but for now, this was a video for Doom 3, the base game. The game, for the most part, I love that it took inspirations from games like System Shock and Half-Life. I love the whole, unlike what most people saying that they hate the flashlight mechanic where you gotta pull out the flashlight, and you gotta pull out the flashlight, right? And then switch to your weapons just like that. I actually personally like this because it adds tension. It adds like a sense of urgency, like oh shit, I see a demon. I gotta get my shotgun out, or rocket launcher, or plasma gun, whatever. The game itself, while it's nowhere on the level of games like the first two Doom games, and Doom Eternal and Doom 2016, I feel like Doom 3 itself acts like a unique take on the Doom series. I feel like it did a lot of things original, which is what I really praise it for. It really took the series to an original direction. I mean, after all, the game's special to me because it is my introduction into the Doom series as a whole, and it was the reason why I got into Doom in the first place. So, yeah, that's my review for Doom 3 itself. I mean, comment below, what is your guys' favorite Doom game? Are you guys excited for Doom the Dark Ages? I know I am. I haven't pre-ordered it yet, but I'm definitely going to when I get my stuff together. So yeah, this is Duke Sparrow signing off. Oh, and by the way, rip and tear.